If you get an opportunity to speak to someone who has a bird's eye view of the glamping and luxury camping industry in the Americas, what do you ask them? What do you want to find out, especially after the health crisis? Welcome to episode 32. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is the business of glamping and unique holiday rentals. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to have you here. As always, I'm incredibly grateful for your company and for all the wonderful reviews you've been leaving me. It's so lovely to have them because it inspires me to keep finding people to interview and to bring you great content. So keep it coming. And also, if you have any suggestions on content you want to hear, I've always got my suggestion box open and I'm all ears. Definitely interested to hear what you've got to say. So today I'm interviewing David Corse. He heads up the Glamping Show US. Now there's two parts to it. There's a glamping show in the UK, which is happening in September this year, and also the glamping show in the US, which is happening in October. I am very lucky to be involved in both, and I have been involved in both since the very beginning, since they were just a concept on the drawing table. So it's fantastic to see them grow so much as the industry expands. So I took the opportunity while I could to get David on a call and speak to him about his perspective of the industry, how it's faring post-COVID, how it's growing in the wake of the demands that the millennial traveller is putting out there for all of us to meet, and really just give us a bit more information about how he can help those businesses and individuals who want to get involved in this industry. So without further ado, I'm going to hop over to the interview now. People in your position are in the most fortunate position because you get to hear so many different things from so many different perspectives. And it means that you're able to learn quicker almost than people who are maybe in their particular niche. You know, you have a central hub of information coming to you. Is that something that you think that you pick up as well?
I think so. Also, we don't have a personal perspective because of the product or service that we're involved with. We're not a structure manufacturer. We're not a resort operator. We're sort of kind of a voyeur of the industry. We get to see both sides, the buyer and seller side, from their perspectives. It's that very convenient 50,000 foot look down on the market, and without skin in the game, I guess, without a need to reinforce a particular point of view, it lets us be more agnostic, which is why it's a little easier for us perhaps to organize a conference program, because we can identify things that are of active concern or being discussed regularly by both sides. So
It works really well.
Yeah, it does.
So what is your perspective of the industry at the moment, the glamping industry? And I think more so because you've been involved in this pre-COVID, pre-health crisis, and now, and we'll talk about the impact the health crisis is having on you at the moment. But first of all, it's kind of like what's your view of the industry as it's going at the moment?
I think everybody had to take a very serious pause for COVID. That overtook everything. First thing was surprise and shock and fear, I suspect. Second thing was, oh my goodness, what is this going to do to my business and my business life or my investment? Do I have a job? Do I have to do I employ people? All of the things that as business people, we have to consider as people and as employees or employers, I guess. Um, it was interesting from the manufacturer side, people, mostly on the structure side, we have a lot of tent manufacturers here in the States, as you would expect. And they have never been so busy. Some of them have redeployed their assets. So we have some manufacturers who began making masks and personal protection equipment, and found other ways either to keep busy or to keep their businesses going during that time out while everybody was just restricted indoors. And I think we had perhaps a little bit more of that here than in some places. However, once people got the opportunity to start sticking their nose outside the door again, there was a desperate demand for people who wanted to get out of the house and do something. But going to a hotel was not high on the list. Getting on an airplane wasn't necessarily very high on the list. The idea of being private and separated with social distancing in a glamping environment or camping in general or a recreational vehicle were very high on the list. So there is a pent up demand, I think, from traditional campers and glampers of wanting to return because it was safer to do that than going to Disney World or whatever else they might want to do. There's also been a pent up demand from people who have never done this before. We've been hearing from several operators that they're getting people that never would have come before who have suddenly discovered the opportunity for a fine time for the family to be together, kind of isolated, but still being taken care of and enjoying nature and the environment and the things around them. So right now, all of our manufacturers are really busy fulfilling orders, and our tour operators, our visitors, our site operators are dealing with large crowds of people as best they can. In some cases, their capacity has been somewhat restricted. Their timing has certainly been restricted. It takes a full 24 hours to thoroughly disinfect and to clean a site. So instead of having 7 days out of 7 available for occupancy with a quick turn, if somebody's only there 3 days, that's a 4-day window that's gone. And if somebody's there for 2 more days, that's only 5 days of the 7 where there's been occupancy. So other things to deal with. But glamping is really, really popular right now from a larger cross section of people than usually would be taking a look. So it's silver lining for this very dark COVID cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a bit of a dark cloud, isn't it? But it's really interesting. Some of the things that you said there, David, are really interesting. Brought back a few memories of when I saw you last year in the US, and I was there for your show there in Denver. And I spoke to, in traveling around, we were in Ubers and always take the opportunity to speak to people. And I always bring up glamping. And I remember speaking to someone who was a mountaineer, and he was talking about all the different peaks in Denver and climbing the peaks. And he was a great adventurer. And I said to him, "Have you ever heard of glamping?" And he was like, "Oh, what's that?" And I explained what it was. And he kind of was, "Oh, what's the point in that? I expect to be out in nature." But then when I took a bit of time and I explained to him, well, this actually means that while you're climbing the peaks, your wife and your children are in luxury, really enjoying some holiday time together, in a really comfortable and luxurious and warm environment. And you could see the light bulb went on a little bit for him. And he said, yes, now that's interesting, because he could see that he could do all the adventuring without having to worry about his family. So obviously we're seeing a huge change because of what's happening with COVID. Maybe people are understanding more the options available to them and all of those kinds of things. Do you think that that's something that people have more of a grasp on now, the understanding of what glamping is, what luxury camping is, and the benefits it can bring to them?
I think it's growing, Sarah. I think there is a giant percentage of the US population that has no idea what we're talking about and has to ask for a definition of the term. But my experience has been identical to what you just described. Someone will say, well, what's that? Never heard of that before. And when you explain it, you can see the light bulb go off. You can see the interest rising. One of the things, and I don't know a lot about all of the glamping opportunities in the UK, clearly, but we have a lot of sites here that have nothing to do with the traditional, we're in the Rocky Mountains, we're in Yosemite National Park, just up the coast here from us. I'm in Southern California, not too far from Santa Barbara, which is about 90 miles north of Los Angeles, north and west of LA. And one of the very, very popular places that sort of spurred a whole business here is people who just took some old travel trailers. The ones here are called Airstreams. I know you know they all aluminum polished like a bullet going down the road, which have been around forever. I mean, the 40s or 50s, and just put some refurbished Airstreams together and made them kind of cool and campy, but they were overlooking the ocean in the city. I mean, they weren't in a beautiful mountainside someplace. There were no trees. It just was a really unusual way of staying rather than a typical hotel or a motel or whatever. There's the site in New York City on Roosevelt Island. I think it's community retreats is doing. Just you're in the middle of New York City, but you're outdoors. It's a very different environment than we think about. So I think the definition of glamping is being pushed and expanded. The envelope is being opened up a little bit each day as people find different ways of offering an outdoor hospitality alternative to what has existed previously. And I think as glamping redefines itself and expands, it just opens it up to, it'll be more interesting to more people who hear the word amping, as in camping, and immediately tune it out thinking, I don't want to sleep on the ground. I don't want to be looking for a bathroom. I don't want to do any of that. Or I passed, that was fine 30 years ago, but not so much now. So it's still an amazing education opportunity. It's kind of a shame there isn't really an organization or organizations here, and I'm not sure how it is in the UK, that just getting together and putting the funds into educating people about what the opportunity is. I think it's just going to grow a lot as people discover it organically.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'm actually doing a bit of research around millennials and how millennials are adjusting our travel trends because of what they actually want out of life. And one of those things is, different things to spend money on experiences rather than spending money on traditional things like mortgages and all that kind of thing. And they like to be nomadic and to move around. And I think one of the things that this whole industry does allow is for that to happen, and therefore the millennials, who are big spenders of today in travel, have all of those things within this industry. So that's very attractive to them. But one of the things, or two of the things that I've always been told, is that when you see investors getting involved and when you see celebrities getting involved, then you can say that the industry is starting to increase, especially as this has come from nothing really back in 2008, something like that. And that's what we're seeing a lot in the US, isn't it? With various things like Under Canvas being invested in significantly and opening lots more retreats and collective retreats as well. But also, who did we have just recently? Some, very big named celebrities who, the Kardashians, who have started going glamping. So do you think this will have an overall kind of upward trajectory trend on the industry as a whole as we go forward?
Well, I think it's two separate things, I think. Looking at private equity or looking at real serious business investors who see the growth potential is probably the biggest signal that this is not a passing fancy, that it's going to be around. And it'll morph and it'll evolve, but in my experience, equity investors are pretty careful, and doesn't work all the time, but if they're going to put millions of dollars into something, they're expecting a return, and their own independent research usually says this is a good idea. So that gives me great enthusiasm and optimism for the future of the sector. I think anytime a high-profile celebrity like the Kardashians gets involved with something, then you're certainly going to get a boost from their base, from their community. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the Kardashians. I'm not in their demographic, although I used to live in the same city they did, but we weren't close. So them doing it wouldn't necessarily affect me. But if somebody that I did pay attention to or I sort of identified with suddenly told me, be it a celebrity or anybody else, and I discovered it that way, I would pay more attention to it and at least check it out. So yeah, I think both things independently are going to be good and bode well. Um, Whether the Kardashians outweigh the institutional investors, I'm not sure.
Well, you never know. They might be one and the same thing if
Oh my goodness.
they're so successful.
My goodness.
So obviously you are one of two parts of the glamping show. So there's the glamping show in the US, which you head up, and then there's the one in the UK as well. I'm involved in both, and they're fantastic events, both very, very different in that because they're unique, because they are suited to the country in which they're based. But you've had your own set of challenges, and because of the health crisis. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about, I suppose, is about your challenges at the moment for getting something which is traditionally a face-to-face, live, in-person event, and moving that to a new, possibly one-off, possibly not, virtual event. How has that been? Tell me a bit more about that.
Um, it's been an extraordinary adventure, I guess. Virtual events have been around the exhibition and conference industry for over 20 years. Before the year 2000, people were developing the software on the platforms. It's just that nobody really cared for a very long time. People preferred face-to-face and touching and feeling and back to the experience. COVID changed that. There must be 30 or 40 new companies that did not exist 6 months ago, here in the States only, that have launched platforms for virtual events. Just necessity is the mother of invention, I guess. We realized early on that we might not be able to hold the event once COVID happened. At that time, we were all in March, still a little naive about the scale of this whole thing, and thought, oh, by October, it'll be over, we'll be fine. When it became clearer that that was not necessarily going to happen, we did the research necessary to figure out the plan B, hoping it would stay just in a drawer someplace. But I guess it's been about 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks ago, the venue in Colorado said, I'm so sorry. Number one, right as of this moment, we're not allowed to hold an event with more than 50 people. But number two, our site is being used as an emergency field hospital just in case, and there are hospital beds waiting, never been used, but just in case. We don't know when they're going to be taken away. So that's when we opened the drawer and pulled out Plan B. There are things about the virtual event which will never be as good as face-to-face, and there are things about the virtual event that are so much better. It's not as much fun doing this from your home or office as in going to Denver and staying in a hotel and meeting your friends or meeting new colleagues, listening live and participating in a conference session, talking to exhibitors, walking through a structure, touching the fabric or the material and seeing the workmanship. It's just face-to-face is how we are wired as human beings. And that works really well. And it worked really well, as you saw, October of last year. The virtual event, digital event, doesn't allow some of those things to happen. Most of those things can't happen. But what can happen is the engagement with the conference content. It's you and I sitting in our home offices having this conversation, being able to consume the content and to still ask questions, albeit via chat, as opposed to raising your hand to be acknowledged. The exhibitors will still be there. It'll be videos and photographs and copy of things to consume and at least make people aware of the different offerings that companies, products and services they have, and they can be consumed a little bit more on your own schedule, as opposed to the open hours from X to Y over those 2 or 3 days. But I think the biggest benefit to a virtual event is accessibility. And I think that's being borne out by what's happened so far. Last year, as you remember, we set the bar very low for expectations for our first event. We said we thought we could get at least 200 glamping business people to Colorado, and we got 454 approximately that showed up on site. As of last Sunday, we had 483 glamping business people already registered for an event that isn't taking place for 6 more weeks. Because you don't need to take 3 or 4 days out of the office. You don't need an airplane ticket or a hotel or an Uber driver or a bad fast food meal someplace. You can consume it at your schedule. And even our live stream conferences, if it just isn't convenient for you to consume it, once it's been live streamed, we will have recorded it and we'll post it on demand. So you can look at it at your own convenience or see it a second time if you saw it the first time. Last year, we had people from 37 states who came to 33 states, I'm sorry, they came to the event. 40 states have registered people so far this year. And last year we had 11 other countries. And so far we have 33 other countries that are sending registrants to this virtual event. So from an attendee point of view, you could be in Zimbabwe, you can be in Mauritius, you can be in Abu Dhabi, you can be anywhere. You could be on the space station, I suppose, and still participate. And as an exhibitor, you have the opportunity to reach a much larger audience and much more diverse audience than you would with people who could take the time and have the money to come to Denver. We prefer face-to-face, and we have dates for the first week of October in 2021, assuming that there's a vaccine and we get this thing handled and we're all able to get together face-to-face again. And even if we have to take precautions by separating the stands a bit or having wider aisles or masks, we'll do whatever we need to do. That's still our preference. We think that the genie might be out of the bottle a little bit here with virtual. And I suspect you'll see a lot of events, not just ours, and not just glamping, but trade events around the world will go to sort of a hybrid format where they will still do their face-to-face event, but will simultaneously broadcast elements. So while somebody's sitting in the audience for a conference, it's being filmed and live streamed to people who could not be there. While the exhibitor will have their stand and you can feel the materials, there are people who couldn't get there who can look at the digital portion of that and get the best of both worlds. So make it a little more complex for us, but a little more accessible for the community at large. That sounded like a commercial, a paid political announcement. It's election season here. I'm getting carried away. I'm sorry.
You're forgiven, David. I think it's great because, as I run my business across the world as an individual online, I know exactly how it is. And I've been doing this now for 10 years. And it's great that, this is happening now, that it is opening it up to a lot more people who maybe can't access the things available to them in certain places, in certain countries. And now they can do that. And yeah, it just means that people are able to get the information they need, the expertise they need, the knowledge they need, all of those things. But the great thing is as well that they can just attend these things in their pajamas. So there's no need to get all, suited and booted and wear the best tie.
It's true. As I say, there are probably more advantages than disadvantages to a virtual or a digital event. But I still think we lose that unique opportunity, not just for looking at products and services, but just engaging with colleagues, meeting new colleagues. One of the things we'll provide for in the virtual event, we call the lobby, but it looks like a giant Facebook group wall. And everybody who comes in, hey, I'm here, and you have a chance to set up your profile, and people can reach out and say, I'd like to chat with you, and you can say yes or no, thank you. We have discussion groups by topic area where somebody who wants to talk about wastewater management can go in and say, hey, did anybody have this problem I'm having? How did you fix it? Anybody have any advice? So those interactions beyond just the conference session, those opportunities are there. There's just something, again, very human about sharing a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and chatting with someone face to face or engaging in that spontaneous discussion group as opposed to stepping in the chat room, if you will. So they each have features the others don't. But so far, it's looking as if we may actually be able to pull this off in October.
Well, that's fantastic. And one of the things that came to my mind when we were talking about this was how a lot of people I speak to in the UK and Europe, and they're talking about, oh, I'd love to get involved in the US market, but at the moment it's just a bit too soon for us to do this. And when we were talking about this, you said, well, this virtual event now is opening this up to people because they don't have to pay for all these expenses to get to the trade show. The trade show, you know, they don't have to move their structures all the way from Europe to the US. You know, there's lots of opportunities here for also doing, as we were talking about before, a bit of market research around new ideas that they've come up with, new products they've come up with, and they're thinking about how would this be accepted in the US, and you know, would there be a licensee situation here that we could explore? This opportunity hasn't existed before, where people at a very low cost can do that market research, can explore whether this would be, or whether what they have, their service or product, would be of interest to the US market. And now you're giving people the opportunity to do that. So that's a really an interesting, very interesting thing for a new business or businesses that are maybe expanding into this market. Is that something that you can see happening a lot?
Well, it's happening already. We have a few exhibitors who've confirmed already. Think of this. This is imprecise, but it's almost as if we're holding an enormous business focus group. So let's take the example. Somebody from Europe wants to come to the States, and let's assume they're not bringing a structure. They're not going to bring hundreds of square meters worth of stuff. They're just going to take a 9 square meter stand, and one person is going to come over. So the cost of the stand is easy. It's $2,000 US. There's an airplane ticket and probably round trip to come back again. There's 2 or 3 or 4 nights in a hotel. There's all the other teeny travel entertainment that goes along with that. There's a week out of the office for making the trip, but you could be doing other things as well. So $2,000 for the stand, $3,000 for an inexpensive ticket and hotel and stuff. Forget the time out of the office. There's $5,000 to stand there for 5, 6, 7 hours a day for a couple of days, and then fly home and make your notes. Now, for as little as $1,000, there's no shipping, there's no travel and entertainment, there's no hotel, there's no airfare. And whether you just simply say, hey, we exist, does anybody care? Have you ever seen one of these before? And whether you do it as a branding or visibility exercise or market research or a little bit of all, we have at least one customer so far that's coming in specifically only looking for partner. They manufacture a product. They want to still keep control of the quality of the manufacturing. They want to be able to license that technology to a distributor / partner who will manufacture and distribute in the Americas. We're North America, Mexico, Canada, and the US to start with. They don't really care about meeting anybody who's a glamping site operator or an owner. They want somebody to help them establish their US beachhead without having the expense of doing all that and starting a company and whatever it's cost to do all that. So that's their objective, is to find distribution, and a licensee or a partner. So whatever those objectives are, if somebody's even thought about sticking their toe in the American market, because it's not just the US, I cannot think of a more cost-effective way of doing it. And this is me being a commercial pitchman again. For that $1,000 for the digital stand. It includes a full conference pass, so they or someone from their team can participate in all 11 conference sessions, ask questions, go to the discussion groups, be in that digital lobby and interact and get a sense of what people are talking about. It's, I think it's kind of a unique opportunity, silver lining to COVID, I guess, from the point of view of this community. So, I mean, thanks for bringing it up. But yeah, it's one of the things that normally stops people from coming over because of the great expense.
Absolutely. But, it's no problem at all bringing it up because, I advise businesses and businesses are asking me questions. How do I get into the American market? And before now, I was saying, well, you get on a plane and you come with me and when you go to the show. But, it just seemed like such a barrier because you're talking about one person attending and everyone inevitably has to go with more than one person. So it's double those costs.
Yeah.
And it just was too much of a barrier, and yet the attraction of finding out what's going on in the US market, what's actually happening with glamping and how is it moving is, I particularly, I have seen in your show last year that UK businesses already there, already one step ahead of everyone else, already attending the show, for that very reason. So it's really interesting to see how it's all moving and how it's all going. But fantastic thing is that you've also been very generous and you've offered a discount code for attendees. So I will give the link in the show notes and everything so people can go there and have a look and see exactly what's going on and where they need to go. But if they do want to take part in that, they can just put in inspired save 50 and it will give them a nice little kickback there to reduce the costs. But I think it's something that as business owners we do need to think about how we're going to be able to ride the wave of what's going on in the world at the moment. And one of those things might be to look at other markets and expand into other markets.
Well, again, the thing that's so interesting to us is how much of our audience isn't from the United States. We, it's not every it's not every country in Latin America, but it's most of them, and the Caribbean and Canada, of course. But it almost makes me want to change the name from the Glamping Show USA to the Glamping Show Americas, because now that it's easier to get here to participate, we're getting so much interest, and glamping is a very, very big deal all throughout Latin America, particularly in Central America. It's just, the Costa Ricas of the world and Belize and Guatemala, they see glamping as a really wonderful opportunity to increase tourism income without having to find a way to build a gazillion-dollar resort complex with 2 golf courses and 4 swimming pools and 24-hour room service, and still charge pretty interesting nightly rates. So I think anybody that's thinking about this hemisphere, again, it's pretty, whether they come just for the conference and take advantage of your $50 discount code, which we're happy to offer, or whether they come into the exhibition and let people see how people respond to their product or service. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me if I'm even thinking about it, but that's easy for me to say as sort of the sales guy. So if anybody's interested, we'd be happy to take them through it and show them the site and give them a demo. And we're 6 weeks away. Somebody's going to participate. We probably need to know by the 1st of October, because that gives us 2 weeks to help build out their digital booth before we go live on October 13th.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure that people will get in touch with you directly or follow the links in the show notes. And you are obviously a very busy man, so I can hear your computer going off. It's clearly a lot of people who need to get in touch with you. So I will leave it there. But honestly, David, I think it's a great show. It's fantastic to see it growing every year on year. And I'm very excited to be involved in it and to see where it goes now that it's got this virtual element, and just to see as well how that virtual side of it, how it can actually reduce the size of the world, really, because that's what it's doing, isn't it? It's allowing us all to have access to something that we wouldn't normally have access to. So if, there aren't many positives that have come out of this worldwide situation, but hopefully if it means we can work closer together and we can all take part in things we otherwise wouldn't have been able to, then I'd say that that's an okay, isn't it?
It's, as I say, silver lining, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, David, and you take care of yourself, and see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks, Sarah.
So a reminder of a few links. If you want to attend the US Glamping show this year, all you need to do is go to glampingshow.us and it will give you the registration page. You can register for free, or if you want to attend the learning conference and have access to that content, then you will be able to access a discount code, which is Inspired Save 50, and that will give you a lovely little discount off of that. If you want some tools to help you launch a new business in this industry, then please download the tools that I give absolutely for free from my website. You'll find that on inspiredcourses.com/tools. Also, if you want to just take a look at the show notes for this episode and follow all the links from there, then you can go to inspiredcamping.com/032, as this is episode 32. Well, stay safe everyone, and hope you'll come and hang out with me again soon.